Good evening. My name is Alfreda Norman. I'm a Senior Vice President at the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, and I have the honor of moderating our town hall this evening around the presidential search for the Dallas Fed. As you know, the Dallas Fed has launched the formal process for hiring a new president. And the purpose of this program tonight is to answer your questions regarding the process and the goals of the search. We'll start by giving our panel representing the search committee and the search firm retained by the bank an opportunity for opening remarks, and then we're going to open it up to you so that you can ask any questions that you might have. So to submit a written question, because it's not too late, and thank you for those of you that have already submitted a question, just click the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen and then type in your question. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers. Thomas Falk joined the Dallas Fed Board in 2019 and is serving as chairman for 2022. Tom is retired chairman and CEO of Kimberly-Clark Corporation. Claudia Aguirre, did I say that wrong?
It's Aguirre.
Aguirre, I love Aguirre. Joined the Dallas Fed Board in 2019 and is now our deputy chair. She is president and CEO of Banker Ripley, a community development nonprofit with 67 locations across the Houston region. She's known for expertise in child development and community development, community engagement, and immigration policy. And then next, we have a representative from Egon Zehnder, the global leadership advisory firm the Dallas Fed retained to assist in the search. Arun Dinga is managing partner of Egon Zehnder's Dallas office and global head of Egon Zehnder's CFO and audit chair practice. Arun consults on executive search, leadership development, and management appraisals for companies in a number of sectors. I'd also like to acknowledge the other Dallas Fed board members on the search committee. These members serve in addition to Tom and Claudia. They are the 6 members of the search committee that the board of directors, and they were elected to represent the public. So we're going to kick off, and we're going to have Tom kick us off and share some remarks. We'll have then Claudia and then Arun, and then we'll get to the audience questions.
Well, thank you, Alfreda. It's great to be with everyone tonight, and great to be with these fine panelists. This is an exciting time in the history of the Dallas Fed. We're looking for a new leader, and it's great to involve the community in that process. And we've had some great input and some good questions pre-submitted. We'll get to those in a bit. The Dallas Fed is a big deal. It represents the 11th district. That's a huge part of the nation's economy. It's 9% of the nation's economy, second only to California. It's a huge oil and gas and energy producing region. That's very important. It's one of the largest exporting states in the country. So it's a very diverse, very rich region. And this is a terrific role. Arun will talk a little bit about the search process. But as I look at this role, we're looking for 3 things in the next leader at the Dallas Fed. We're looking for someone that can really be an influential participant in the monetary policy. And I think the nation's monetary policy is critically important. That's what a lot of people think about when they think about the Fed. So finding someone that can really represent the 11th district and do that exceptionally well is critically important. Second thing, we need someone that can run a big complex bank. The Dallas Fed is a very complex organization. It has a budget of more than $200 million. It's got 1,200 people. It's got multiple branches all over the district. It provides supervision as well as other banking services to financial institutions across this part of the country. So big, important role. The third thing we're looking for is someone who can do the community outreach part of this role well, to really understand what are the things that are getting in the way of optimal economic performance in this part of the country, and what can the Fed do to bring the right people together to maybe start to address those issues. So someone who can play at the monetary policy level, someone who can run a big complex bank, someone who can really be effective in community outreach, and to take the Dallas Fed to the next level of performance is really what we're looking for. Should be easy, right?
Absolutely. Thanks, Todd, for that. Claudia, I wonder if you could just give us a little bit about the process of finding the next Dallas Fed president.
Sure. Thank you, Alfreda. So let me start by saying that the process for finding the next president is really set forth by federal law, right? And it's specifically our Federal Reserve Act. And so the way it works is the bank has a 9-member board. And it's equally distributed between a Class A, Class B, and Class C directors. Class A represent the bankers. Class B and C, whether they're elected or appointed, represent the public. And so it is the search committee that is made up, you saw their pictures, is made up of the 6 board members that represent the public, are Class B and Class C directors. So the search committee, alongside our search partner, will begin the interview process, very robust. We'll get into that a little later. And the top candidate will, subject to the approval of the Board of Governors, will be appointed as the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas in the 11th District.
Simple enough, right?
That's right.
Well, you know, you serve in a tremendous capacity as CEO of Baker Ripley, and you have responsibility for engaging and representing communities, all of the communities in which you serve. Can you talk to us a little bit about diversity and inclusion and how that relates to not only monetary policy, but specifically how it relates to the presidential search?
So when I came in 2 years ago to the board, I think one of the most exciting parts about the board and the work, besides being in the monetary and the policy, was all the work that Dallas Fed had been doing around diversity, around community engagement. And so this opportunity of having a search committee that is, you know, what we say is it matters where you start. And where we're starting is we've got a robust, diverse board. Thus, we have a diverse search committee, and we have a diverse search firm partner. And so I think that that's what the public is going to get from the next president, is a committee of people dedicated to be able to see the lenses of the communities. And so that's why I think it's really important, Alfreda, that we look at the entire landscape of our communities and our neighborhoods, that we look at every table, every room, because, you know, this region, much like the nation, is already seeing a very, very diverse community. And so being a part of this committee will be looking at where can we access the different perspectives. It's not really just ethnicity and gender, but really the different perspectives of it. So I think, you know, in short, this town hall meeting is the epitome of that. It is to start to say, we are here, we're transparent, we're open, we're looking for the next great leader to continue the work that the Dallas Fed has been doing.
Great, thank you, Claudia. Now, Arun, you're our panelist that is not a part of the Fed. So you have a great lens here, and I wonder if you could share your perspective about the search, your professional profession, not just you, but your firm. I mean, you guys are experts at finding executives. So tell us a little bit about the search.
Thanks, Alfreda. And it is wonderful to be here and speak to everyone. I echo Tom's sentiment. This is very exciting. So Egon Zehnder, we're a global leadership talent and advisory firm and search firm. And we have been helping companies find their next CEO for over 55 years. Given that, we naturally have a very big and diverse and broad set of networks that we tap into for candidates or for referrals. But despite having that network, we also want to reach out to people in the Dallas Fed communities for other ideas and for other candidate referrals. So I can't stress this enough. If there are people listening who think they might be interested in this role or may know someone who's right for the role, please go to the Dallas Fed website and submit a name. We will take it under consideration for sure.
Great.
I also want to mention, as Claudia just did, that we and the search committee together are very committed to looking at a very diverse set of candidates, broad and a range of perspectives. And I feel like between our own networks at Egon Zehnder, as well as partnering with the communities in the Dallas Fed with new candidate ideas, we're going to find a great leader for the Dallas Fed.
Thank you, Arun. Now it's time to hear from you, our audience. Many of you have already submitted questions, so we're going to get to those. But it's not too late. At the bottom of your Zoom screen, if you click on the Q&A button, there's a box there. Just type in your questions and we on my trusty iPad here. I'm going to get your questions and we're going to get to those. So we've got lots of questions. So I hope you guys are ready.
We are.
Buckle up, settle
Yeah,
in.
we're ready.
All right. And I'll be toggling back and forth between those that are writing in questions now, but I'm going to start with the questions that people have already sent in when they registered. And as you can imagine, those first questions were around qualifications. And Tom, you've mentioned a little bit about this, but I wonder if all three of you could sort of join in and talk to us about what are the characteristics the search committee is seeking, and how does one reach out to the search committee for discussion?
Yeah, I'll start and then our team can build. Well, we've put on the website, the Dallas Fed website, the full position spec. It's about 8 pages long, and it has all those characteristics that we talked about and more. But as I think about those three things that I talked about, monetary policy, running a big bank, and community outreach, those are really important. And monetary policy, sometimes people will say, well, are you looking for a PhD economist? Is that what they have to do? Are you looking for a hawk? Are you looking for a dove? And we're looking for an independent thinker. We've got a fantastic economic research staff here at the Dallas Fed. We want someone who can be able to work with that team, understand what's happening in the 11th district, and build on that and go to the FOMC meetings with an independent point of view. And then be able to influence and engage others in that process. And it's the monetary policy in the United States is a real strength. And we want to make sure whoever's representing the 11th district does that very, very well and plays a full role and elevates the impact of the Dallas Fed. The second element, running a big complex bank, this is a fantastic group of 1,200 people that are doing amazing things. We need someone who can help lead them and help them develop and get to the next level of performance. And then community outreach, we've done a lot of great things in the community. We can't solve every problem, but we can certainly shine a light on some of them and maybe bring some people together to do things. So finding people that have done that and who have not just a head, but a heart and can understand what's going on in the local communities is really important.
Yeah, and I would offer, Tom, as you said, you've got these characteristics and these 8 pages of specs that they're on our website. And what we're really looking for is maybe somebody that might not have everything, but that is able to, at least what they don't have, be able to have some historical experience or historical achievement that they've been able to listen, right? This leader, while they have to have an expertise on all 3 of those areas, they need to be able to listen and be able to grow and show that they've embraced what they don't know. And so, as a leader of an organization that is so robust as the Dallas Fed, you're going to have to be able to listen and to innovate based on what the current regional challenge is. So you've got to be able to pivot. You've got to be able to be flexible and be able to not just keep at one, looking straight at one goal or one thing. You're going to have to be able to multitask the entire regional challenges and be able to learn from others, listen from others, and how to solve a lot of the issues.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, being an expert in all 3 parts that Tom listed or ticking every box on an 8-page spec is not possible. It's about finding a leader that has some strengths, and where there are some potential gaps, it's about finding a person that has learning agility, humility to know what they don't know, can leverage their team and learn from them. And that's what makes a great leader in any position.
Well, following up on that, we had another great question that asks, which would be more important to you, private sector executive experience or public sector executive experience?
And so I think we think in summary, both are valuable. And so, you think about the various domains that we're looking that candidates might come from. You could come from the business environment. You could come from academia. You could come from prior government experience. You might have worked in multiple of those venues. And so we're looking at candidates in all of those areas, and we're assessing them against the criteria to be able to do those 3 jobs we talked about. We don't have a bias or a predisposition that one won't work or one must have this to be acceptable. We really are casting a wide net and seeing what we get.
That's right. I agree, Tom. There is absolutely no way of knowing if one or the other is better or preferable. It really is around the person, because the learning agility that comes with leadership is probably one of the most important things, because you know what you know, but how are you going to learn what you don't know? And so that's such a key, and where that comes from, leaders may come from a broad, industry. So I would say more is how much are they willing to learn what they don't know? And then how well do they fill that spot of the characteristics that we need?
Yeah. Well, here's a question for all three of you. This is getting a little bit more specific. This person asked, how is the board and search committee evaluating the trade-offs between hiring a business professional or more traditional PhD economist, given that the skill sets are distinctly different?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there are a lot of Fed presidents who are PhD economists. So it's proven that skill set can work and be effective. In Dallas, in our last couple of leaders, we've had individuals that weren't PhD economists, and that also worked very effectively. And so we have an open mind on that, and it comes back to we know we're going to need to make trade-offs.
Mhm.
So
That's
to
right.
Arun's point, there is no human being that will check every single box. And so it's as we get into it, in our judgment, who will best be able to do those three jobs, and whatever degree they have or whatever other experience they have will inform that, but there isn't one answer that is the secret.
And I would add to Tom, is that the beauty of the search committee that I have witnessed already, much as we were in the boardroom, as in the search committee, is being able to talk and debate those trade-offs and being able to discuss them openly. I think that discussion, that dialogue, is what's going to make us choose the best candidate for this job.
Yeah. Arun, I guess you didn't think that you're getting intel to help you with the
This is
selection
great.
process right here,
Taking notes
live
right
and in
now,
person,
yeah.
right?
Taking notes. Yeah.
Arun's used to making trade-offs in searches. You never find the perfect candidate.
It's all about making trade-offs, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a question here that just came in. So many politicians seem to have an opinion on how you select the next president. What are you doing to ensure there's no political interference in this process?
Well, I'm sure that elected officials do have an opinion and express it publicly, and they're free to do that. And so one of the great things about the Fed, though, is that it is a nonpartisan institution, and all the members of the Fed board, all the members of the search committee have to adhere to a code of conduct on certain political activities that we cannot participate in. And so we know that there is a political aspect to searches like this, and just as everyday citizens care about who the Fed president is going to be, as well as the people that are on this call. And so, we hear all those voices, but we are clearly focused on our mission and what we have to go do. And we're going to, keep our head down and go get that done and find the next outstanding leader for the Dallas Fed and help him or her start up and be successful and take us to the next level.
Great. Well, I'm going to change gears just a little bit. Here's a question, or I think more of a comment, and I'd love to get your reaction. How about hiring the next Dallas Fed president who has practical experiences rather than from a cookie cutter academic lot or Wall Street type? Preferably someone who is non-white, nonpartisan, and has industrial, technology, community banking experience. What's your response?
Send us those names. I mean, yeah, we're all ears. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
we
if you
would,
know someone
yeah,
that has that,
seriously. You go to our website, and if that's you, send us your resume. And if you know someone that you think would be great at that, let us know. And so, yeah, that's absolutely what we're looking for is someone who brings those kinds of skills to the party, that have got practical experience, that know how to lead, that can be influential, that understand economic problems and how to solve them, that have an empathy for the things that are happening in the community around them. And we've had great leadership like that over the years with both Rob Kaplan and Richard Fisher. And we want to take that to the next level.
Yeah. Well, so now we're in this diversity and topic. And Arun, we had a question that came in that said, what measures are you taking to attract a diverse candidate pool? So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that, and then you guys weigh in as well, please.
Please, yeah, please. So that is a very important focus for Egon Zehnder as a firm, for the search committee for this search. As I mentioned at the start, we have a very broad network that we're already reaching out to, and we have a very important, thriving DEI focus in our firm. So our network is actually very broad and is covering a broad range of diverse candidates. So we're very proud of that, and that's very important to us and to the search committee. In addition to that, names we are getting from the Dallas Fed communities are also coming to us, and we're looking at those names equally as well. So I do believe we have, in totality, a broad set of diverse candidates that we're considering. And it's an important focus for us and for the search committee.
Well, a question just came in that said 20% of the US population is Latino. To my knowledge, there's never been a regional president who is Latino or Fed board member. Given your diversity of our state, expand on the importance of finding good Latino candidates.
Oh, so the Latinos going to talk. Well, I think it's the region. I've had a front row seat to the change of the landscape, as many of us around this table have. And so we've seen the shift. We know what the population and the numbers look like. And we want to honor it, and we want to celebrate it. And that is why when I thought about coming onto the board and looking at what the diversity looked like and how purposeful the Dallas Fed had been and continues to be in bringing the diversity, I knew that this was an opportunity to bring a different face and a new face to the Dallas Fed. As it pertains to the next president being Latino or any other, I would just say that the search committee, again, being as diverse as it is, we have access to rooms and tables that have people that look like me, have people that look like you, have people that look like every one of us around this table. But at the end of the day, it is about finding the right person for this position. It is the most dynamic position that I will probably, and many of us, participate in finding that next leader. But no door is closed. If we are looking at every room, every table, opening every door. We're accepting all kinds of referrals. And so if you know of someone that looks like you, absolutely, as Tom said,
Yes.
send it to us.
Well, and I would say our Dallas Fed boards are very diverse. So, both at the main Dallas Fed board, as well as our regional boards in El Paso, San Antonio, and Houston. In fact, our search committee, we have 2 Latinos, 2 African Americans, 3 women, 3 men. We've got a lot of different industries, some nonprofit, some for-profit, some energy. It's a very diverse group of people that are going to bring those lenses to scanning the candidate pool. And I think we are casting a wide net. We do believe good talent lies in every part of the demographic spectrum. And
That's right.
we just want to make sure we get our fair share of that.
And I think that the town hall that we're having in moments like this really display our commitment to having that conversation, to having that true and real conversation. It's about being able to call it what it is. It's about being able to say, yes, we have to be purposeful. We have to look behind and across the broad spectrum of candidates, but it's also allowing that new prospect, that future leader, to say, wow, here's where the Dallas Fed is. Here is, and now this is the starting point for them. This is how we engage a community. We are transparent, we are open, and we engage a community this way. And for them, so they'll know if this is the right place for them, if this is the kind of engagement they want to see. And I think as a Latina and as a woman, at the end of the day, I want my voice heard. Doesn't matter as much as who's on the other side. I really want, and so the next leader has to really be embracing the communities and the neighborhoods, so that the lens of their neighborhood, their community issues, their digital issues, their challenging in entrepreneurship, and they're challenging in banking, whatever challenges our communities are, if someone is there listening to it, that will lift all.
Sure. Another good question that came in, I'm going to direct this to you, Arun. According to the bank's website, a key qualification is 20 plus years of experience, including a proven track record of executive leadership. Mm-hmm. Could this qualification limit the diversity of your applicant pool, since it might lean toward white males?
I don't think it will, and I'll explain why. First of all, the words 20 years plus experience is sort of an indicator. It's not all that we're looking for. The spec, as we mentioned, is 8 pages long. There's lots of qualifications we're looking for. And maybe someone won't have exactly what is on every line item. Having said that, when we say experience, we're talking about a broad range of experience. We're not talking about necessarily academic experience or Wall Street experience or economics experience. We're talking about 20 years of or so of just experience in leading people and helping others. That could be community service experience. It could be a lot of things. So I think it still leaves the search open to a broad range of candidates who bring different experiences.
Yep. Any other comments? on
Yeah,
that?
even
No.
I would have 20 years
Yeah.
of experience, as
Yeah,
young as I
would
am.
love that. If you find the perfect candidate
That's
that
right.
only has 18 years of experience, chances
We're
are
gonna-
we're going to want to talk.
We're going to get
Talk
it,
to
yeah.
Here's a question that just came in. Texas is unique in the broad number of community and independent banks, which support and fuel the needs of our entrepreneurial small business and mid-sized businesses. How are you integrating the voice of community banks into the selection process?
Absolutely. I mean, the community banking is a difference that the Dallas Fed has relative to some of the other banks. We don't have any of the big banks headquartered here. And so it is, and by the way, one little known fact is that the Dallas Fed is owned by the community banks. I believe that that's not correct. And so we do know that whoever we hire, that gets back to that community outreach dimension that we talked about, has to be able to engage with the community banks, understand what their issues are. And we've all seen that at a board level. Having the community bankers as the A directors brings us a perspective on what's actually happening economically in the region that's very valuable.
And we've seen it in the work of staff in the community, where we're looking at the entrepreneurship and the small businesses and the supporting the organizations that support those efforts. So I think it's a very purposeful theme in the Dallas Fed.
Another great question coming in. We got a lot.
That's
This
good.
is
That's
a
a
very
great question.
engaged,
Yeah, this
a
would be-
very engaged
This would be
audience.
boring if we had no
I love it.
questions, right?
Succession planning is important.
Mm.
Please discuss if internal candidates are considered not only from the 11th district, but from other districts as well.
Yes, absolutely. So succession planning is really important. And so and we have had candidates in the pipeline who've come from within the bank and from other banks. And those will continue to be considered and screened and against those criteria that we're looking for.
Absolutely.
Arun, we had a question that came in that's asked, are you considering leveraging a suite of HR assessment tools once you have targeted an applicant pool?
Yes, we are. We definitely could do that. We use a variety of techniques to assess candidates. Part of it is really thorough, rigorous, behavioral-based interviews and competency discussions. But beyond that, we do have a suite of external tools that have been proven, evidence-based, that we could use to assess candidates as well. And on top of that, one thing people oftentimes don't think about, but is very important, is referencing. We want to thoroughly reference the finalist candidates with not just people that they have worked for, but people that have worked for them or have been customers of theirs or partners of theirs, to get a 360 view of how they work in the community and how they work with others and how they work on their teams. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the best predictor of success of someone in a new role is not what they say they might do, but what they've actually done in the past. And so the more you can find out how have they actually handled difficult situations, how have they led teams, how have they built strong organizations, how have they influenced others without authority, all those things, they've got strong examples in those areas, will be more predictive of their behavior than how they might respond. Not that the tools are bad, and those can be very useful in certain areas as well.
But they're just complementary. They aren't the heart of it.
Right.
Here's a question that came in. Texas and our 11th district is a unique marketplace and needs a representative of our values and unique economic dynamics. How are you prioritizing this in your design and expectations?
Well, we talked about the person needing to be an independent thinker. I think that's where I would start. I know you're going to say something, Claudia. Why don't you build on that?
Yeah, I think that, again, it is going to require us to look at the entire landscape of characteristics and the end result and find that right person. For us to go down one lens or one trajectory isn't quite going to get us to the next leader, right? So we can't stress enough about how this is such an important and encompassing process. It's more robust than you can imagine, because you've got to really look at the entire, economic research, economic policy, community, leading a large organization. those are just an amazing array of characteristics that's what we're going to have up against us.
Well, we talked early on, do we limit the search to someone who's already in the 11th district, so someone who's already in Texas? And we felt, no, that's not the right way to go. We should cast a wide net. This should be a national search. We want the very best person out there, and let's get them to Texas as quick as we can.
Well, that's right. I mean, I think that was the biggest point around, do we get it from Texas or from across? But there are lots of folks that would love to get to Texas as quick as they can if it meant, getting the right person.
Yeah. Well, this is a great question. I love it. Someone's paid attention to the timing here. The last presidential search lasted for almost a year. Will this search be just as lengthy?
So I wasn't on the board then, but I do know some of the guys that did it, and these are tough searches. And people will say, "Well, when are you going to be done?" I said, "We're going to be done when we find the right candidate." And so we're going to take the time that it takes to find the right leader for the Dallas Fed. And so we're not going to put a clock on it, but we're going to go as quick as we can and work expeditiously. I don't know, Arun, I was going to ask you, when are you going to make our dreams come true?
Yeah,
here?
I think I give you the exact date on the calendar right now. We can just lock it in. Now, I would say, look, Tom is right. These things take as long as they take to find the right candidate. But I will say that I'm emboldened by the fact that it's been a lot of interested response from a lot of really qualified candidates. The search committee is extremely engaged, and they're giving a lot of time to this. They're very accessible. They're very prompt. And so this process is moving diligently and carefully, but also it's moving at a good pace. And so
that sort of might answer this question that's asked about who actually does the screening process and who conducts it. Once you have the applicant or nominee pool, who screens and who conducts that screening?
Yeah.
So I think that's
I think the initial screening would be done by our firm. And as Claudia mentioned, my colleagues and I represent a diverse set of backgrounds and experiences. And so as a group, we assess these candidates from multiple lenses. And it's very comprehensive. And then as those candidates do well, they go on to meet members of the search committee who do additional screening and competency assessments. So
yeah, and just to maybe elaborate on a little bit more is, there's always a long list of all the names that have come in, and we see the whole list, and the ones that have been marked as most qualified, and the ones that maybe have some bigger gaps, or they've got some questions, or maybe there's some that were referred that aren't interested. And so we look through all of those just to see, did we miss anybody that we should elevate and have a conversation about those. So so it's not just the search firm that is the gate. The committee is also actively involved in seeing the entire list.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. The fact that the engagement of everybody's eyes looking at these different candidates.
And having all of us look through them.
It's a rigorous, right?
Yeah.
Each one of us looking through each one.
Yeah. Well, here's a fair question. Half of your committee comes from one city, Houston. Will that influence?
We don't hold that against them.
Will that influence who you would select as president? And has the Dallas Fed ever had a president from the largest city in Texas?
I don't know if the
know.
Dallas Fed's ever had a president from the largest city in Texas. Probably, you may know. It's
I don't know.
Yeah,
that's a good question.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think we're all on the Dallas Fed board representing the 11th district. None of us represents our individual city.
Town. That's right.
Yeah. I think when we select for the board, we try to make sure we represent the region. So we make sure we got people from El Paso, people from San Antonio at different times, people that represent large and small communities. So we do try to make sure we're representative of the entire district. And I think the committee will play that role. Right. But if we find an outstanding Houstonian who fully meets all the criteria, we won't hold that against them. We'll absolutely embrace that.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit and put this out there for all three of you. The Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas has played an important role in supporting community development as both a convener and through research. Is the panel looking for someone who will continue to prioritize that impactful work?
Yeah, that was one of the things that I didn't know as much about the Fed's role in when I joined the board. So I knew all about the monetary policy thing because everybody reads about that and everybody is focused on that. And I knew a lot about the bank part where they have cash in the basement and they take care of clearing checks and doing wire transfers and all those kinds of things. But I didn't know about the community outreach part of it. And it's such an important role, and it's trying to help solve problems that are getting in the way of a community of performing at its best level. And this is really
Real life
what you do every
challenges.
day.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
so,
right.
And you're involved in that. So
Yeah.
why don't you tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing? Because
Well,
maybe the people on the
I
phone
am
might
involved.
not-
It's near and dear to
yeah.
my heart. It's nice to know, but I witness the board of directors talking about this all the time. You're listening to not only the things that the economic reports around our district, but you're listening about what's happening in each of our communities. And I think that's really important. And the goal of our community development work is actually to close the divide, to have economic inclusion, to have economic mobility and inclusion for particularly low to moderate income communities. And so it's really, it's nice to know that the board is aware of this work, are ambassadors of that work, and that the search committee is looking for someone that is that appreciates and would.
No, that's right.
do
I
that
mean, when
work
you
as
think
well.
about it, we represent the consumer, and the consumer is our neighbors, our communities. And the faster we have access to real life challenges that our neighborhoods and our communities are facing, specifically our sometimes voiceless and faceless communities, our low income communities, our communities of color. Many times the challenges around economics and monetary policy sometimes impact them in a different way. And so to be able to turn that lens around and to be able to bring that mirror to the board and to have a leader that understands that and have the Fed, the Dallas Fed, really entrenched in the communities is really what makes this such a dynamic time for the new leader.
And just to be clear, the Fed has no money. We can't solve all your problems, but we
Right.
can bring people together and agree, hey, this is a problem. Let's get together and work on it. Let's see if we can do something about it. And that's a very powerful role. And I think it's one that we absolutely want to see continue.
And go
No,
ahead,
you go ahead,
Arun.
please.
I would just mention, I would add that what excites me about the Dallas Fed's work in the community is really what, Tom, you're saying we can't solve all problems, right? But together, as a community, as organizations, we can. And so the Dallas Fed really plays the role of building capacity in some of our nonprofits and some of our neighborhoods. And so when we support organizations that they then can support individuals, I think that's what makes a difference, right?
That's a great way to think of it, building capacity.
It's building capacity so that our neighbors can help themselves.
Yeah.
Right. The next Dallas Fed president will be someone who doesn't just have experiences, but will be someone who is community minded, who is mission oriented, and who believes in building something bigger than themselves. And building capacity within the community is something that we'd want in the next Dallas Fed president.
Well, here's another question that came in. Labor unions have not been well represented on the Dallas Fed board. Would you consider a labor representative for Dallas Fed president, or commit to hiring a president who will have strong outreach to the labor community?
Yeah, absolutely. They're as much a part of the 11th district as all the other citizens of the 11th district. And so, we are, the door is open to those skill sets as well.
Absolutely.
Let's see, we have a little bit more time
Yeah.
as I race through these questions. The Federal Reserve recently restricted the types of financial investments Fed presidents and others can be involved in. Are you concerned these tighter restrictions will limit the number of business leaders who might be interested in the job of Dallas Fed president, or discourage successful business leaders from applying?
I think the answer is I don't believe so. And I guess I would say broadly, you've seen a lot of it written about what's happened in the Fed, but you're also seeing discussion about other elected officials or judges or members of Congress and what types of financial assets they should own or trade. And so I think anyone that is interested in public service knows that there's going to be some restrictions that have been placed on that. And so, from what I understand of the rules, and they're still in the process of being finalized, but what we know so far, I don't think it will be an impediment. And there may be some candidates that won't choose to participate, but they probably were candidates that maybe weren't interested in public service because they would have to know that there's some of this that would come in any public service role.
Yeah. Any
I
other comment
agree
on
with
that?
what Tom said.
Yeah.
Claudia, I'm going to ask this of you. In order to assure the greatest level of transparency possible, will the list of candidates under consideration be made public?
No. I think that what we're trying to have this during this town hall meeting is really about the process, right? How we become transparent and how we have access and how we accept individuals into the process. But, you know, to see individual names is you know, I think it would have some impediment for folks to want to interview, right? The confidentiality, I would say, would limit. You know, as a CEO of an organization, I think one of the challenges we always see is people at high levels trying to interview or go after the position and the confidentiality for their previous employer. So we want to be very transparent and open with the process. We want to tell the public where we are. We want to be able to say we've left the process so open that anyone who wants to apply has access to it. But once the names and the interviews start happening, we won't be releasing the individual names.
Yeah, I mean, it would make Arun's job much more difficult, you know, because let's face it, practically, if you have a good job, and if you're going to be publicly announced as one of 3 finalists for a different job, your current employer is going to wonder how committed you are to that role. And so you're probably not going to want to be a finalist unless you're pretty sure you're the finalist.
Right.
So to be able to keep the quality of talent in this process
That's
that we
right.
need to do
That's
this
right.
job, we aren't going to be as transparent of the list of candidates as probably some might like.
I think that's right. I think the earlier point where Tom mentioned that the financial restrictions probably wouldn't limit people who were interested in a life of public service. I agree with that. But I do believe that if you were to publish names of people who are interested in the job, that would limit the number of candidates that would apply for the job naturally for the reasons Tom just said. So
Again, I would just continue to talk about, Frida, is that the search committee, the board that has been elected and appointed to represent the public, our position here today is that we are doing everything along with our search partner to be as inclusive, as transparent with each other around the dialogue of trade-offs, around what we want to see in the leader. I think we're having some really healthy discussions around the table about what it's gonna take to get that right leader. And so I would venture to say that the confidence in the search committee is our first priority, is that we will have a very great dialogue to bring the very best candidate forward.
Well, I was going to ask for some closing remarks, but I think that
That's pretty good
did
right
it
there.
right there. I think that's a great wrap up for what we're trying to do and what we hope that we have shared with you this evening. I would remind you that on our website, dallasfed.org, there is very, I think, transparent and detailed of everything that we talked about tonight, and also ways that you can submit candidates, either yourself, if you think that you meet those qualifications, or someone that you know. So I want to thank our panelists for being here today. And I also want to thank our audience. The questions were amazing. They were coming in. I hope I got as much as I could in the time that we had. So thank you again for being engaged in the process. We're committed to our communities. We want to share our information broadly. And we ask that you stay tuned to this journey. And we look forward to having a great outcome.
Yes.
So until next time, thank you for tuning in.